Okay, Baruch Hashem. Today's daf yomi is Sanhedrin daf Yud Ches, Sanhedrin 18, as it starts a new chapter called Perek Kohen Gadol. This daf is dedicated for Shmir for the Chayalim, Hatzolah for the Shvuyim, Yeshua for Am Yisrael. This is daf yomi for Shabbos Kodesh. And so says the Mishnah, Kohen Gadol done v'danin oso. A Kohen Gadol is able to be judged, and we also judge him. He can come before. He's able to be a judge, and we also can judge him. Meir u'me'idin oso. He's a witness, and we can testify about him. Choitz, he can do chalitza on his brother's wife. V'choltza ishto. And if he dies, you could do chalitza on his wife. U'miyabmin es ishto. You do yibum on his wife. Avuhu eno miyabim. But if his brother's wife dies, if his brother dies, he does not marry, he does not do yibum with his brother's widow, because a high priest is not allowed to marry a widow. Meis lo meis, let's say the Kohen Gadol has one of the 7 relatives who die. Eno yotze achar mita. We don't allow him to follow the coffin. Rashi says, Dilma asa laminga, because it's a geder, it's a fence. Maybe he'll come to touch it. And so this is what the Torah talks about when the Torah says, Min hamikdash lo yotze, mikdusha so lo yotze. He's never allowed to leave his holiness, meaning to say he has to distance himself from Tumah. So it's a siyag de'araisa. And so this verse is referring to a Kohen Gadol who's an onaid. So therefore, he's not even allowed to go to the Levaya. So what does he do? Meaning to say, when they go down one alleyway, then he goes into that alley. When they go into the other alleyway, he goes into the previous alleyway where they are. So he doesn't see them, meaning to say, when they go into the second alleyway, he goes into the first alleyway. Meaning to say, he has to keep them out of sight. He's only allowed to go into the street after they turn the corner. Ad Pesach Sha'ar, and he goes out with them until the entrance. He only goes to the entrance of the gates of the city. He doesn't go beyond that. And because once you go beyond the city gates, then there's nothing to block your sight. That's the position of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda Omer Eno Yotzei Min HaMikdash. Rabbi Yehuda says he doesn't even leave the temple because it says in the pasuk Min HaMikdash Lo Yetzei, and he says that's specific. When he does a shiva visit to others, there, meaning to say when they go in a row, when they come back from burying the dead. And so, typically speaking, the people cross between the 2 rows, and they comfort the mourner who's standing in his spot. So, so when he comforts others, usually speaking, all the people will walk in front of the mourners. And the one who is the assistant to the Kohen Gadol puts the Kohen Gadol in the middle between himself and the people, meaning to say the Kohen Gadol goes in the middle, his assistant's on the right, and the people are on the left. But when the Kohen Gadol is himself comforted from other people, all the people say to him, "We are your atonement." Meaning to say, we want to accept whatever should be coming upon you. And he says to them, "May you be blessed from heaven." So when you do what's called the Sudas Havara, which is the meal that you eat, the first meal, he doesn't eat from his own food. Rashi tells us from the Gemara Masechet Moed Katan that you're not allowed to give him from his own food. The community has to give him. So when you give him that meal, everybody reclines on the ground, whereas he's sitting on the bench. Typically speaking, the mourner would not be reclining, but he's going to be reclining. The king does not judge. The king is not able to be a judge, and we do not judge the king. King does not testify, and we do not testify about him. Right? The king does not do chalitza, and we don't do chalitza to his wife. So the king is different. The Gemara is going to explain why. Next case, Rabbi Yehuda says, if the king wants to do chalitza or yibum, if then he's remembered for good. Amrlo ain't shomalo. If the king wants to do chalitza or yibum, we don't listen. May no sin almanusa, and we don't marry the widow of the king. Rabbi Yehuda Omer, no say hamelech amanuso shamelech. A king can marry a widow of another king. Shekim atzinu b'David shenasa amanuso shel Shaul. David married Shaul's widow, as it says, but na lecha es beis adonecha v'sneshei adonecha b'chekecha. I will give to you, David, the house of your master and all the women of the master in your bosom. And so that is a reference to David HaMelech marrying the widow of Shaul. The Gemara says, Kohen Gadol done, Shita. It's obviously the case that the Kohen Gadol can be a judge. Why would we think he can't? So the Gemara says, done in Oso it's Tzvichoi. No, it's telling us that he can also be judged. You might have thought that it's disrespectful to him to have him come before the court. The Gemara says, Hanami Pshita. That's also obvious. If we don't adjudicate him, how would he be capable of being a judge? We say, it says in the pasuk in Tefanya, his kosheshu v'koshu, and Reish Lakish said that means fix yourself and only then fix others. So you can't be a judge of others if you're not first a judge of yourself. I did the Kabbalah misname Melech or done so Tananami Kohen Gadol done v'done. And so because we're going to say a king cannot be a judge and you can't judge him, therefore we say a Kohen Gadol can judge, then we judge him. So it's just stylistic. Or maybe it's to teach us like the following brayza. Kohen Gadol shahar gets a nefesh b'mezin nereg. So maybe it's like the following brayza. Kohen Gadol who kills a person intentionally is killed. B'shogig goev v'over alasei v'alosasei. Or maybe to tell us that if the killed accidentally goes into exile, v'over alasei v'alosasei. And v'areu kehedjo kol dvarav. Meaning to say, we'll have to see what this last sentence means, but if he kills accidentally, what does it mean that he can be judged? It means to say that if he kills accidentally, he goes into exile. So, and if he kills purposefully, he's killed. So the Gemara says, it's obviously the case that if he kills purposely, he's killed. No. So the Gemara says, teaching us the Chiddush, kills accidentally, he goes into exile. So that's what it's teaching us. The Gemara says, it's also obvious that if he kills accidentally, goes into exile. No, we need it. You might have thought, it says about the person who kills accidentally, it says, on most HaKohen HaGadol. He says he sits there until the Kohen Gadol dies. I might have thought only somebody who can get a release from exile by the Kohen Gadol dying, he's the one who goes into exile. But I might have thought the Kohen Gadol, since he can't be released from exile by the Kohen Gadol dying, therefore he doesn't go into exile. The Tanan, because we learned Tahorig Kohen Gadol Shahargas the Nefesh, Eno Yotzim Misham Olam. If somebody kills the Kohen Gadol accidentally, he goes to the Ir Mikvat, and he never leaves there. Because since there's no Kohen Gadol in the temple when he went into exile, so therefore there's no ability for him to be released. And Ema Lowigly, I might thought if that's the case, therefore he shouldn't go into exile. Kamash Moan, that even the Kohen Gadol goes into exile. Maybe that is the case. Maybe the Kohen Gadol should not go to exile because it can't be released. I feel Kohen Gadol mashma. It says that any murderer goes there, even a Kohen Gadol. Gemara says overall aseva to say, what does that statement mean when it says he violates a positive commandment and a negative commandment. What does that statement mean? Osagi do avar? Does he have to violate a negative commandment? Doesn't make sense. Halachakamer. And mavar al say will also say Ariel kehedjel called varav. But if he violates a positive commandment or a negative commandment, then he's going to be considered like a hedjot, and he's tried by a court of three. Pshita, it's obvious. No, Sokdat Kamina Hall Tanan ain't done a loss. Shev was Navi Sheker was going Gadol P Bezin Shel Shevach. I might think since by a capital case we say it requires 71. Vamar Vada Barava Kol Gadol Davar Gadol Yavio Achat Vav Shel Gadol. I might think Ema Kol Davar Shel Gadol. I might think anything. Kamar Shimon is telling us that a regular positive or negative commandment goes to court of three. Maybe indeed it should require a Sanhedrin. Miksiv divrei gadol, hadavar gadol ksiv, davar gadol mash. No, mamish, no, only something truly great. The Kohen Gadol is me'id or me'id in osel. Me'id, how can he testify about Tanya v'talamta? Sometimes you show hide. Pamim sha'atam mitohem, upamim shem'iyatam mitohem. Sometimes you hide and sometimes you don't hide. Okay, it's that. Kohen will be based akvaros. Zakein ve'eno afikvo. Though that if the Kohen finds something, a lost object in a cemetery, he doesn't have to return it. Elder, and it's not according to his honor, he doesn't have to return it. Or if he would make more money not returning it, then he doesn't have to return it. That's why it says sometimes you can hide. But anyway, we see from here that the Kohen Gadol doesn't have to do a mitzvah that's beneath his honor. So why does he have to testify? Amar Rav Yosef me'id melach. He testifies for a king. Testifying on behalf of a king is not beneath his honor. So Vatanan will done also will me'id so. But if a king can't be a judge or be judged, nobody testifies against him. So if that's the case, why would the Kohen Gadol have to testify? Amar Rav Zera me'id or ben melch. He testifies for the son of the king. Ben melch hedjot. That's a hedjot. Ela me'id b'fnei melech. So it means to say he testifies in front of the king. Meaning to say the king is one of the judges. So the Gemara says, but I thought we said we don't put a king in the Sanhedrin. The Gemara is going to tell us why. So the Gemara says, the Kohen Gadol asav yativ. Now, because of the honor due to the Kohen Gadol, the king can come and sit. And after the testimony is heard, and so because then the Kohen Gadol's testimony is heard, the king gets up and leaves, and we look at the case. Kufa, the Kohen Gadol be'ibor shana. Neither a king or a Kohen Gadol can sit in the making of a leap year. Melch b'Sanhedrin. Why do we not put a king in the Sanhedrin? Meaning to say Rav, because we read Rav as you may not respond to the master. So meaning to say if the king was there, nobody would be allowed to disagree with him. Well, Melch Kohen Gadol be'ibor shana. Melch mishem asfaya. The king, because he would extend the year in order to save money, because he pays by a yearly salary. So if he extends the year, he gets it month free. Kohen Gadol misham tzina. Kohen Gadol, because he doesn't want. He wants it to be warmer, so he doesn't want to extend the year because then it's going to be colder on Yom Kippur when he has to walk around barefoot the whole day. Amar Papa Shmamina Shasa Bar Yarcha Azil. We learn from here that the weather of a year follows the months that it would have fallen had the year not been extended. So there were three cowboys who were standing there, and they heard the rabbi said, if the ground is so warm that the early crop, the lakish, and the late crop of barley, the early crop of wheat and the late crop of barley come at the same time, dinu adar, then it is adar. V'emlav, waste in adar. But otherwise it's not adar, it's shvat. V'chad amar, im Torah b'tzafar b'tlag yamus. If an ox almost perishes in the morning from the cold, ubetira betul ta'ena yidmoch yishlach mashkei. And in the afternoon, it's so hot that the ox goes to sleep in the shade of a fig tree. and rubs itself against the tree, dinu adar, it's adar. V'moav din adar, other is not adar. Chad amarim kidum tokef uchad yeh. And the other one said, if the east wind is so strong, yipach b'ocha nafek l'kiblei, and yet when you blow your cheeks, your breath goes out and doesn't prevail, dinu adar. That's adar. V'moav leis din adar. Otherwise, not adar. The Ibra Rabbanan Lahishata, and upon that, the rabbis extended that year. Basically, the Rabban understood that the weather was more attuned to Shvat than Adar. So therefore, they made a leap year in order to make another Adar. So we see from here that the weather patterns that typically follow the months and not months that would have been fallen had the year not been extended. Gemara says, "V'tizber Rabbanan Arva." Also, do you think the rabbis are relying on the shepherds? And Rabbanan Achushbaina Samach. Roy Bakar is the Yehuda Stain and Belsan. They rely on their own calculations, and the cowboys were really corroborating what they thought. Okay, we'll stop here. God willing, we'll review this tomorrow and go weiter as well. Shkoyach.
Thank you.